Your mind went back again. You didn't choose to. You weren't even thinking about it. And then, without warning, it was there. That person, that conversation, that moment you've replayed so many times. You can recite it word for word. You know it's over. You know going back doesn't change anything. And yet your mind keeps returning to it, like it's looking for something it never found. You've tried to stop. You've told yourself to let it go. You've distracted yourself, stayed busy, filled every quiet moment with noise. So there was no room for it to surface. But the moment things slow down, it pulls you back every time. And you already know the advice. Stop thinking about it. Focus on what's in front of you. Move on. You heard it. You tried it. Maybe for a while it worked, but then it came back. And now there's a part of you that's quietly exhausted from the effort of keeping it at bay. Not because you haven't been strong enough, not because you haven't tried hard enough, but because the thing you're trying to hold back is not something that responds to effort. And here's what makes this so hard. It doesn't happen when you have time for it. It happens in the car. It happens in the middle of a conversation. It happens right before you close your eyes at night. It happens when something small, a song, a smell, a passing reference, opens the door you thought you'd finally managed to close. And then you're there again, right where you started, wondering what it's going to take for this to stop. Something is clearly unfinished. You just don't know what to do with that yet. And you're not alone in this. Buddhism has understood this pattern for a very long time. And what it says about why your mind keeps going back might be the most honest thing you've ever heard about it. That's what we're going to explore today. And you felt this, that particular pull, not just missing something or someone, but being unable to stop returning to it, even when every reasonable part of you knows you shouldn't. Buddhism doesn't call this weakness. It doesn't call it obsession. It calls it something much simpler. And once you understand what it actually is, something changes in how you see yourself. The Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. But here's the part most people miss about that teaching. He wasn't just offering a positive thinking formula. He wasn't describing what happens when you try hard enough. He was pointing to something much more specific, something that operates whether you're paying attention or not. He was describing how the mind creates grooves, patterns, channels it keeps running through because it has run through them before. Buddhism calls these samskaras, mental impressions. Every experience leaves a trace. Every strong emotion, every moment that mattered, every ending that didn't quite end the way you needed it to, leaves a mark on the mind. And the stronger the emotion attached to that experience, the deeper the groove it carves into the mental landscape. Think about it this way. When something truly matters to you, when you loved something, lost something, feared something, or were fundamentally changed by something, your mind doesn't just file it away neatly. It etches it in. It writes it into the way you process everything that comes after it. And then, like water following the path it has already worn, your thoughts keep flowing back to it. Not because something is wrong with you, not because you haven't tried hard enough to move on, but because the groove is deep. And deep grooves take time. And here's where it gets harder. The mind doesn't just go back to things that felt good. It goes back to things that felt unresolved. This is one of the most misunderstood truths about grief, about rumination, about the kind of thinking that catches you in the middle of the night or at a random moment during an ordinary day when you weren't expecting it. about why you can't stop replaying certain conversations, even years after they happened, even after you've told yourself you're over it, even after you genuinely thought you were. Your mind isn't punishing you. It isn't holding you hostage out of spite. It's doing something it was built to do. It's trying to complete something. Buddhism teaches that the mind has a deep, persistent drive toward resolution, toward closure. Not always in the form we want, not always a final conversation or a clean explanation, or an apology that finally lands and settles everything, but a felt sense of completion, of having understood something all the way through, of having arrived at the other side of it. And when that doesn't happen, the mind keeps returning. Think of it like a song that stops before the final chord. Your nervous system keeps waiting, keeps holding itself slightly open for the resolution that never came. And so it keeps playing the song again from the beginning, looking for the ending it never heard. That's what the return is. Not failure, not weakness. The mind doing exactly what it was designed to do when something is left unfinished. And so it goes back again and again, not because it enjoys the pain of returning, but because it's still listening for the ending. And there is something almost tender about that, isn't it? The mind holding a door open for a closure that hasn't arrived yet, keeping itself available for a resolution it hasn't given up on. Not cruel, not irrational, just doing what it was made to do. You know this feeling. You've been here before. The thing that keeps pulling you back isn't actually the memory itself. It's the emotional charge still attached to it, the unfinished quality of it, the part of you that hasn't yet fully arrived at the other side of what happened. Buddhism describes this with the concept of upadana, clinging, not clinging in the dramatic sense, not grasping at something with both hands, but a subtler form of holding, the kind that happens without your permission, the kind that operates just below the surface of awareness, the kind that looks like understanding from the outside, but still can't fully release from the inside. And here's what that means for you. Every time your mind goes back to something, it isn't a sign that you haven't healed. It isn't evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that there's something still alive in that groove, something that hasn't finished moving through you yet. Buddhism also describes this through the lens of the 3 marks of existence. One of them is anicca, impermanence, the teaching that everything changes, that nothing holds its form forever. But here's what's interesting about that teaching when it comes to the mind. Impermanence doesn't mean things disappear instantly. It means they are always in the process of changing. And the return of a thought, the pull back toward a memory, isn't a sign that something is permanent. It's actually the movement of impermanence in real time. The mind is processing it, working it through, letting it change shape bit by bit, even when from the outside it looks like nothing is moving. You just can't see that work happening because it's happening below the surface. But it is happening. And the more you fight it, the more you resist the return, the longer it tends to stay. This is where Buddhism offers something genuinely different from most of what you've heard about moving on. The common approach is distraction. Stay busy. Think about something else. Fill the silence so there's no room for it to come back. And distraction works for a while. It works as long as you keep moving, keep the noise going, keep the calendar full. But distraction doesn't close the groove. It just keeps you from noticing it while it's happening. And the moment the distraction stops, you're right back there. often with more intensity than before, because you've been postponing the encounter, and the mind keeps track. Buddhism doesn't suggest filling the silence. It suggests something that can feel almost counterintuitive the first time you really sit with it. It suggests you stop fighting the return, and instead you learn to watch it. The Buddha taught a practice called sati, often translated as mindfulness, but not in the polished lifestyle brand version that word has become. Not a 10-minute morning ritual. Not a way to feel calmer faster. Sati means clear seeing, witnessing what's actually happening in the mind, without immediately trying to change it, fix it, or make it stop. Seeing it as it is, without piling judgment on top of the pain. And here's what that actually looks like in practice. The next time your mind goes back, instead of immediately trying to redirect it, you pause. You notice that it went back. You observe the pull itself before you respond to it. And you ask yourself, not harshly, not analytically, but with genuine curiosity, what is still alive here? What part of me hasn't finished with this yet? Not to solve it in the moment, not to trace it back to its origin and analyze it until it finally makes sense, but to acknowledge quietly and honestly that something unresolved is still present, and that its presence is not a problem. It's information. It's the mind's way of saying, something here isn't finished. Something still needs to be met, and it needs you to actually be here for it. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from spending years managing a thought instead of actually meeting it. You know this exhaustion. It's not the tiredness of having done too much. It's the tiredness of having held something at arm's length for so long your arms have forgotten what it's like to rest. This is where most of the energy goes. Not into the memory itself, but into the constant management of it. The vigilance of keeping it from surfacing at the wrong moments. The effort of redirecting it each time it appears. The low-level tension of never quite being sure when it will come back next. Buddhism points to something simpler. Not easier, but simpler. If the memory is going to come, let it come. But change your relationship to the arrival. Instead of bracing against it, meet it. The way you might meet someone you've been avoiding for a long time. You don't have to welcome it warmly. You don't have to be glad it's there. But you can open the door. You can let it be. You can be present with it without letting it take over the whole house. Because something shifts when you acknowledge it fully. Not immediately, not in a way you can measure the next morning, but something begins to move when you stop pretending it shouldn't be there. When you stop adding the weight of judgment to something that is already heavy enough. And something in how you understand this begins to shift. When you resist the return, you send a signal to your own nervous system. You tell it that this is something to be avoided, that it's unsafe to face directly. And the nervous system responds to avoidance by keeping the thing close, by continuing to surface it, by bringing it back again and again. Because you haven't yet communicated to it that you've actually been with it, that you've sat with what it carries, that it's safe to release. This isn't a failure of willpower. This isn't a malfunction in you. This is the system doing exactly what it was designed to do, protecting you from something it believes you haven't finished facing. Your mind and body are genuinely trying to help. They just use a method that doesn't always feel like help. And the way through isn't to push harder against it. is to give the mind what it's actually looking for. Not the person, not the moment itself, not the conversation that would finally explain everything and make it all make sense, but presence, your own full, unhurried, non-judgmental presence with what happened, with how it felt, with what it cost you, with what it changed in you, and with what it left behind. Buddhism calls this the middle way. Not suppression, which locks things in place by refusing to look at them. Not obsession, which keeps circling the wound without ever landing long enough to let it close. But clear, honest, compassionate witnessing, the willingness to be with what's there without needing it to be different from what it is. The Buddha said, you yourself must strive. The Buddhas only point the way. And this is what he was pointing toward. Not a method you follow precisely, not a result you earn by doing it right enough times, but an orientation toward your own inner life. A genuine willingness to meet your mind honestly, instead of managing it from a safe distance. When that orientation starts to settle in, something begins to change. The visits become shorter. The pull becomes less urgent. The emotional charge attached to the memory starts to soften. Not because you forced it to, not because you finally achieved enough distraction, but because the groove has started to fill in naturally, because the mind has finally felt heard. And what feels heard doesn't need to keep raising its hand. But here's what nobody tells you about this. This isn't a linear process. It doesn't follow the clean arc. That healing is usually described as having like a wound that closes steadily in one direction, until one day you wake up and it's simply gone. Some days your mind will go back more than the day before. Some weeks will feel like you've lost ground entirely. Some moments completely without warning. Something will pull you back in with the same intensity it had months ago. And you'll wonder if anything you've done has made any difference at all. This isn't failure. This isn't the process breaking down. This is what the process actually looks like from inside it. And most people, because nobody told them this, interpret those moments as evidence that they're stuck, that they haven't healed, that there's something wrong with them. But there isn't. There's an old story in the Buddhist tradition. A monk comes to his teacher and says that after years of practice, he still finds the same thoughts returning. The teacher doesn't look surprised. He says, that is not the problem. The problem would be if you no longer noticed them arriving. The thoughts didn't stop. The awareness changed. And with that change and awareness, so did the relationship to the thoughts. They were still there, but the grip had loosened. Not because the monk had finally succeeded in pushing them away, but because he had finally stopped trying to. This is what mastery of the returning mind looks like. Not silence, not absence, but a different quality of presence with what's there. Buddhism doesn't promise a clean trajectory. It offers something more honest than that. The grooves that took the longest to carve take the most time to fill. Some of them may not disappear entirely. And the goal isn't to erase them. The goal is to no longer be controlled by them without your awareness. There is a real difference between a groove that runs in the background, shaping your mood and your choices before you've even noticed it's been triggered, and a memory you can sit with, feel fully, understand clearly, and then gently set down when you're ready. That difference isn't achieved through force or through time alone. It's achieved through something quieter, something most people never slow down long enough to find. The willingness to let the return happen and to be with it fully without fighting it, without judging it, without needing it to mean something has gone wrong. Because nothing has gone wrong. Your mind is doing exactly what minds do when something mattered enough to leave a mark. It's looking for resolution in the place that still feels unfinished. And the most powerful thing you can offer it isn't another strategy for making it stop. It's permission. Permission to be exactly where it is. And permission, given honestly and without condition, is often what starts to release the grip. Not all at once, not in a way that feels like progress at first, but in the quieter moments, when you stop fighting and start witnessing, you'll notice the space beginning to open up. A little more room around the memory, a little less urgency in the pull, a little more stillness in between the visits. Think about what it would mean to stop measuring your healing by whether the mind returns, and to start measuring it by how you meet the return when it happens. Not with dread, not with frustration, not with the exhausted resignation of someone who believes it will never actually change, but with the quiet steadiness of someone who has learned that the return is not the enemy. It is the process, and you are inside it, even on the days it doesn't feel that way. Even on the days it feels like you're right back at the beginning. You are not. You are somewhere in the middle of a long, quiet movement that is happening whether you can see it or not. That stillness isn't emptiness. That's what real movement feels like from the inside. Not dramatic, not complete, but gradually more spacious. Gradually more yours to choose what to do with. And that's the thing about all of this. You spend a lot of energy trying to get your mind to stop going back. And that effort, as natural and understandable as it is, may have been working against you. The groove doesn't close from resistance. It closes from presence. From the moments when you let yourself sit with what the mind brings up and actually feel it without rushing toward interpretation, without needing to arrive at resolution before you're ready, without needing it to mean anything more than what it actually is, a part of you that hasn't finished yet. Those moments are not comfortable. They are not what the world around you usually recommends, but they are where the real movement happens. Not loudly, not quickly, quietly and honestly and over time. Your mind is not broken. It is not caught in a permanent loop it cannot find its way out of. It is doing what minds do when something mattered deeply enough to leave a groove worth returning to. And the kindest thing you can do for yourself right now isn't to push harder against the return. It's to stop fighting it, to let yourself be with what it brings up with the same patience and gentleness you would offer someone you love who is carrying the exact same thing. That kind of presence extended toward yourself is not weakness. It is not giving in. It is the beginning of what actually works. And this is worth sitting with for a moment because it runs against almost everything you've been told about dealing with pain. You've been told that strength means not going back, that healing means the thoughts stop coming, that moving on means the memory loses its pull. And because you've believed that, every return has felt like evidence of failure. Every return has felt like proof that you're not doing it right. But that was never what healing looks like. Healing looks like the return coming and you being here for it without falling into it completely. The memory arriving and you being steady enough to let it pass through. rather than holding it under the surface, where it builds pressure over time. This is what Buddhism is pointing toward when it talks about liberation from suffering, not the absence of difficult thoughts, not a mind that never returns to what was hard, but a relationship with the mind that no longer requires those thoughts to be gone before you can be at peace. If this is something you're sitting with, you're not alone in it, and there is more here worth exploring together. If these conversations reach you where you are, consider subscribing. Every video is made to meet you exactly where you are, with honesty, with depth, and without rushing you anywhere you're not ready to go.